Hey, I Heart Sequels fans, James Curtis, the Pork Chop Express here with a new episode of UNSEQUELIZed, where we talk about films that, in my opinion, deserved a sequel, never got one, would have loved to have seen a sequel, but for countless reasons, never really wound up getting one. Today we're talking about two features, actually, both of them early 90s films produced by the Disney Studios, that basically wound up being the franchise failures, as far as launching a series goes. One had an incredible pedigree behind it with a huge star who was directing, producing. It was a dream project for him. The other was a smaller film based on a lesser-known superhero with a cast of not necessarily unknowns, but the lead was certainly an unknown at the time. So the first one, Dick Tracy. Summer 1990, Warren Beatty comes out with the film that he's been trying to make for so long that people thought maybe he was just a little too old to be playing the part when he got around to it. Dick Tracy is not a perfect film. Like so many movies, it's not a perfect film, but it's a hell of a lot of fun. The cast is amazing. What Warren Beatty put together. I mean, it's only a Robert De Niro and a Jack Nicholson short of being like this perfectly stacked deck of amazing actors. You've got Warren Beatty in the lead, but the real star of the movie for me is Al Pacino playing Big Boy Caprice, the ultimate bad guy in the world of Dick Tracy. It's probably one of my favorite villains of all time. Pacino's just having a blast playing this part. It's pure comedy. The makeup stuff obviously really helps, and his visage is one of Richard III, so he knows how to play up that kind of grotesque, having done all that stuff, working in Shakespeare and things like that. But he finds the comic proportions of this rather grotesque character. But Pacino is one of many amazing actors playing villains in this film. You've got William Forsythe, the amazing William Forsythe as Flat Top. You've got Ed Ross as Itchy. You've got Dustin Hoffman playing Mumbles. James Caan has a very small part. The late R.G. Armstrong, who recently passed away, who is so amazing in the old movie The Car. I just love that guy. And he's so bad in that movie. So badass. He plays Pruneface. Henry Silva's in the film. It's just front-loaded with amazing actors. Dick Tracy is also one of two movies that I can think of where Madonna doesn't completely bother the hell out of me. The other being A League of Their Own. I thought Madonna's actually works really well as Breathless Mahoney. She has a great rapport with Beatty. I mean, they were dating at the time, so it's not surprising, but I thought that they worked really well together. Even better than her, though, is Warren Beatty's casting of Glenn Headley as Tess Trueheart, Dick Tracy's long-suffering girlfriend. She's so amazing in the film. She's so warm and so wonderful and so vibrant. She's amazing. Charlie Korsmo, who didn't have much of a career as a child actor, but was really good in this, and he's quite good in What About Bob? All around, the cast is solid. The production design is amazing. It's very similar to the way that Robert Rodriguez would work with Frank Miller to pull off Sin City. It really is a big, bright, garish comic book of a movie. It doesn't look like any real world that we know of. It looks like The Amazing Approximation, this bright, colorful film noir world. Stephen Sondheim's music is amazing. The songs are fantastic. No surprise that the film had nominations for song, won for song that year. But that being said, it is a very kind of stiff film. It doesn't always work. The humor is pitched at a particular level. And it's one that, again, it doesn't always work, but when it works, it really does. I think the main thing that really keeps Dick Tracy from going off the rails is actually Al Pacino. Pacino, again, is so fantastic in the film. It's easy to forget about Dick Tracy now, it seems. So few people know about the film. I've found it doesn't really get brought up, amongst comic book geeks or movie geeks with the kind of love and kind of revivalist slant that so many other films do. Again, it's not a perfect film, but it's amazing to me that the film was made in the first place. It wasn't a complete and total failure. It wasn't a flop. It didn't make a shit ton of money, but it wasn't the big success that they were waiting for that year, as far as Disney was concerned. But they were, from my understanding, working on getting a sequel made, and they're still supposedly in litigation on the rights to this. And the sequel seemingly would have gone huge. It would have had to have gone huge because at the end of Dick Tracy, every fucking bad guy is dead. There's not one person left standing. So Dick Tracy pretty much wipes the slate clean of all the city's bad guys, seemingly. So there wasn't anywhere else for him to go except for bigger, brighter, maybe outside of that. And supposedly the second film was going to mine certain territory that Max Allan Collins did in a novel that followed the film about Dick Tracy going to war, going to war in Europe. So who knows? It's never going to happen. At least not with Warren Beatty in front of the camera. If he was too old to play Dick Tracy in 1990, he's far too fucking old to play him 22 years later. It is one, I think, but Dick Tracy is one I think that's in need of some rediscovery, or needs more cheerleaders and champions. I'd like to champion the charge. There's too much alliteration going on here. But seriously, I would like to lead the charge to Dick Tracy becoming something that is much more talked about. I think for me, the only thing that really suffers when I watch Dick Tracy, for me now, is watching the film, hearing Danny Elfman's score, and feeling like of all the scores that he did for these kind of comic booky films in the early 90s and late 80s with Batman 1 and 2 and this film and Darkman. I think Darkman is an amazing score. I think of all these, this is the least of his works that's playing very much in that theme. But it does still have a good driving anthem, and it's not the worst fucking score. But it's just my least favorite thing about Dick Tracy. So again, it's on DVD and it's dirt cheap. You can get this thing for, I don't know how much on Amazon, probably $1, but you could probably get it brand new. I think you can get this like brand new for like $6. I think I found it at FYE for like $6 when I was diving looking for bargains. Cut to a year later, and Disney has another film. This one based on a character who's not as iconic. The Rocketeer was a creation of Dave Stevens, something that had been made in the 80s, so it's a relatively new story, new character, but it has a very old-timey feel. It takes place, early parts of, the late 30s, and then it would be the early parts of the 40s, essentially. It's all there in the title. The guy who gets a rocket pack and is able to fly around righting wrongs, essentially. I'm very I'm minimizing it, essentially. But The Rocketeer was one of those films that kind of came out of nowhere. It didn't have a very big budget, but Disney was looking to essentially get something started with this, just like they had with Dick Tracy, something that never really got off the ground. I'm still not sure what it is that kind of kept The Rocketeer from being a major success. There's a lot of things that you could point to, but it's definitely not the quality of the film. Between Dick Tracy and The Rocketeer, I'll take The Rocketeer any day of the week. I remember when it was announced that the Rocketeer's director, Joe Johnston, was making Captain America, I was just like, well, I don't have to worry about that film. It's going to wind up being a really solid film. And I think, honestly, Captain America's my number 2 favorite amongst all the Marvel films. Iron Man's number 1 of the actual Marvel Studios releases. It would probably be Iron Man, then Captain America, and then the Avengers. So, but Johnston's work, this was only his second film. He had gotten the gig because of the success that he'd had with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, another film that was a massive hit that seemingly has been lost to the ages. I don't hear a lot of fans going on and on about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but Rocketeer, unlike Dick Tracy, does have a pretty big cheering section now in the fanboy world, but it wasn't always so. I think the Rocketeer suffers probably in the sense that it suffered in the summer of '91 because it was getting serious competition with Terminator 2 and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I don't want to be an asshole and I don't want to start any arguments. I would actually posit that The Rocketeer is better film than both of those. I don't hate T2, I just have problems with it. I don't hate Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, although there's reasons to dislike the film, but it is an enjoyable lark. I will say that both of those films' directors, James Cameron, made better movies, and Kevin Reynolds actually did a much better film when he made The Count of Monte Cristo later on with Jim Caviezel and Guy Pearce. It mines very similar territory as Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, but it does so much more successfully. But anyway, that's a digression. The Rocketeer, I mean, it could be that it was just summer fatigue, but it was not an expensive movie, but it really didn't make a lot of money. But it's a much more enjoyable film. It's very rewarding experience. The cast is great. Timothy Dalton is a fantastic bad guy. Jennifer Connelly is gorgeous, and she's a fantastic actress. And the lead, who was pretty much a relative unknown, a guy by the name of Billy Campbell, who's gone on to do a lot of other character work afterwards in film and television, is really great. And Alan Arkin's really great, his friend and mentor. It's a good movie, and I can remember seeing both Dick Tracy and The Rocketeer in the theater when I was a kid and wanting to see more adventures. And again, The Rocketeer is one of those films that, had it got a sequel, supposedly it would have gone much bigger. It was another one of those things where The Rocketeer probably would have gone to Europe, gone to war. I know that there was some stuff that Dave Stevens was working on that in the comic books that might have led to that same storyline, but whatever, neither here nor there. If The Rocketeer deserved a sequel, it's never going to get one. It's far too late now. My main hope with both Dick Tracy and The Rocketeer being names, brands, is that they don't get some kind of awful reboot. But now is the time for almost anything that was a comic strip or a comic book to get another film adaptation. And what with the Hulk having, his third screen iteration this past summer, and a reboot of Spider-Man, and sequels to everything. I wouldn't be surprised if both Dick Tracy and The Rocketeer found new life as new films. But I enjoy the older films, and if you haven't seen them, you should. If you haven't seen them in a while, you should go back and rewatch them. They're both fun and enjoyable films. Supposedly, IDW has been reprinting a lot of the old Rocketeer comics, but now there's going to be a new comic starting. I think it starts tomorrow. The first issue might be coming out, but there's going to be all new original Rocketeer tales. Dave Stevens, the creator of the Rocketeer, passed away, so it's not him. I can't remember who it is off the top of my head because my memory's shot, and I just barely started getting back into comics. But I am looking forward to seeing a new Rocketeer storyline. I'm excited for that. Speaking of comics, if you haven't yet, you guys need to go out and get the first 2 issues of IDW's new Mars Attacks comic. I don't know if I've brought this up before, but that's really fun. And I've just been going back and rereading a lot of stuff that I've missed or trying to play catch-up on, things I would definitely recommend. Ed Brubaker's Criminal comics are always great, but his recent, or not that recent, but fairly recent, Last of the Innocents storyline as a 4-issue arc was really great. I'm reading America's Got Powers right now. That's a fun book. I'm surprised I haven't heard more buzz about that. And then there's been they did those new Peanuts comics, which are so much better than I expected them to be. I mean, without Charles Schultz, you kind of wonder how you can create something Peanuts driven at all. But they've done something really good with the first 4 issues, and I've enjoyed all of them. I haven't been keeping up with 52. So you're not going to get much information out of me about that. Same with all the new Marvel stuff. But I can say that those are some things that I have been reading. The Mars Attacks, America's Got Powers, Criminal, Last of the Innocents. Those are all really fun. So just digression on the comic books, the Peanuts stuff. That's all been fairly enjoyable. Untold Tales of the Punisher is actually pretty good. Speaking of Marvel stuff, again, I don't really want to get too deep into continuity for any book right now, but these standalone issues of Untold Tales of the Punisher have been pretty fun. They're not as good and they're not as wild as the old Untold Tales of Spider-Man that had been running for a while, back in, I believe it was the late 90s, early 2000s, which those were really fun books. But so far, the first 2 issues of Untold Tales of Punisher is pretty good. But that's pretty much it for Unsequelized this week. Go out, see Dick Tracy, see Rocketeer if you haven't already. You're going to enjoy them. Again, further adventures never to be seen, I'm sure, but it would have been nice to see where these films would have gone. But both films were disappointments for any number of reasons. I don't think you could call either of these films less than enjoyable. Sorry, I gotta work on my fucking I gotta bust out the thesaurus lately. So I will be back. It's been a while since I've done something. The last thing I believe I did was my wrap-up thoughts on Dark Knight Rises, and just the Batman series in general. I will say I saw Dark Knight Rises one more time. I found it a little bit more enjoyable because at a certain point I just stopped nitpicking and went along for the ride. But that seems to be my problem. I had that same, not necessarily a problem, but it's like the first time I watched Watchmen, I was too busy like criticizing the film, nitpicking and analyzing instead of just kind of trying to enjoy the ride. That's not to say that either of those films are much better since I checked my brain in at the door, but it's a different experience the second time around for me because that's when I really start to just kind of let it all sink in without actually starting to take it apart while I'm watching it. But anyway, so I will be back. There will be more episodes. I plan to do some Even Better Than the Real Things. I plan to talk about some more of my favorite sequels. I will be doing more roundtable stuff. But anyway, so this is James Curtis, Pork Chop Express, signing out. I will see you soon.